Hello and welcome to Cheers to Fears, where we take horror films and turn them into drinking games. We're your two hosts. I'm Alex.
And I'm Tucker. Today we will be making a drinking game for The Driller Killer, directed by Abel Ferrara, who also stars in the movie as Reno, and it is written by Nicholas St. John. This movie was suggested to us by King Need Gore, so thank you for the suggestion. And if you haven't already checked out his channel, you definitely should, because he puts a lot of effort into his videos, and he's a huge supporter of the horror community, so definitely go check him out. The links to his channel will be in the description below.
Reno, a struggling painter, feels like he is working on a masterpiece of a painting. However, he is finding it increasingly difficult to concentrate with a new punk band moving in downstairs and is constantly playing music day and night. He is starting to greatly struggle with money, and to take the edge off, he starts to release some pent-up aggression by murdering homeless people on the streets with his trusty drill.
Of course, we have arrived at the spoiler warning. If you have not yet watched the movie, feel free to do so now, as we will be going over the drinking rules. We have a list of our rules posted on screen now, so we recommend that you watch the movie as it is easily accessible because it's public domain and it's on YouTube. Now let's move on to the rules for the movie.
Well, let's start off with our first rule. As always, that is death. If you see a death, you take a sip, and that came to a total of 12 sips in the movie.
Yeah, and honestly, there's nothing too crazy going on with this movie for deaths. They're pretty basic. Obviously, every death is done with a drill, so I'll give it credit for that because, you know, Halloween did it with just a knife. This one's trying to do it with just a drill, and I don't know, it just wasn't very gruesome or gory or anything like that. And obviously there was a low budget, but I don't know, they didn't get too creative with the kills, I'll say.
Yeah, a lot of the kills weren't creative, and that's really disappointing to see in a slasher movie, honestly.
Anyways, moving on to rule number 2, it's whenever you hear scream, cries, and yells, as normal. And this had a good amount of sips involved, giving us 17.
Oh my God!
Yeah, not too much to add for that one. So let's move on to the next rule. Rule number 3 is whenever you see a drill, you take a sip, and that came to a total of 13 sips.
Yeah, and we mentioned how this is the only thing used for the kills. And one more thing to add about the drill is it was neat how it didn't have to be plugged in, and they also had an explanation for it.
Yeah.
With the Porta-Pack, I think it was called. It was like basically a wireless battery that worked to plug the drill into, so at least they had an explanation for it.
Yeah, it was stupid, but at least they had filled their continuity holes.
Yeah. Moving on to rule number 4, it's whenever you see the buffalo painting that Reno's working on, and this gave us 9 sips, and the only thing to really say about it, it's pretty cool artwork. It looked great.
Yeah, it looked spectacular, actually, I think. Well, let's move on to rule number 5, which is whenever you see red lighting, you take a sip, and that came to a total of 12.
And this was a pretty interesting visual style, especially in the scenes where you could see that Reno was kind of going crazy, and it just quickly cut to him in a room that was all red and he's covered in blood and stuff.
Yeah.
Just to kind of show his descent into madness, I guess, and how crazy he was kind of going.
Yeah.
I liked that style that they tried with it, I guess.
Yeah, and there was also some scenes, I think it was at, what is it, like the punk club or whatever you want to call it. There was some red lighting there. I thought all those shots were really well done.
Anyways, moving on to rule number 6, it's whenever Carol's ex-husband is mentioned, and his name is Steven for the record. That gave us 5 sips.
This rule really shows us the difference between Reno and Steven.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what caused them to get divorced in the first place, but the difference is pretty clear. Steven's a lot more caring, charming, sending her love notes.
And wealthy.
And yeah, he's rich too. Well, Reno's just broke ass as hell.
And disrespectful towards Carol.
Oh yeah.
And obviously the disrespect can be tossed up to Reno's stress because of money and, you know, trying to get this painting done, and he's starting to go insane and stuff, but still, in Carol's eyes, and rightfully so, she doesn't want to put up with it. So.
Oh yeah. Our next rule is whenever you see Reno painting, you take a sip. We should add though, this isn't whenever you see Reno drawing.
Yeah, and there's not much to say for this rule other than it gave us 7 sips. And so I'll move on to rule number 8, which is another rule involving the buffalo painting. It's whenever you see a close-up shot of the buffalo's eye, and this gave us 7 sips. And honestly, we could have just done a general rule of close-ups on eyes in general, because there was a few shots where it was just people's eyes, specifically Reno.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we just made it simpler by saying the buffalo's eye, because it's very deliberate when it happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, now let's move on to the 9th rule, which is whenever Reno's painting or him being a painter is mentioned, you take a sip, which came to a total of 9.
Yeah, and this was kind of the main plot of the story.
But it's one thing with you, it's another, isn't it, Mr. Miller?
Ah, come on, Dalton. It's only $500. It's gonna be my greatest piece. Where do you see it? Love it. Give me that 500 and I'll give you that painting in 1 week.
It obviously didn't happen all that much, but it was, like I said, the main point of the film. And we got to see more about his boss that wanted to see a good picture out of Reno, and it generally just disappoints his boss, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And just to clarify, this is whenever Reno's paintings are mentioned, not whenever you see his paintings.
Mm-hmm.
So either him being a painter is mentioned, or when his paintings are mentioned. And now our 10th and final rule for this drinking game is whenever there's a punk band playing music, it's the same punk band throughout. I think they're called the Roosters.
Roosters, yeah.
But anyways, this gave us 12 sips throughout the movie.
I feel like the punk music itself was tolerable for the most part. I do think that there was problems with the audio, though. The audio in the movie sounded, I think, just poorly. So
Yeah.
I feel like that greatly affected the music itself.
Yeah, and I mean, the music was nothing special. It was kind of a generic punk sound, which I'm also a fan of.
Yeah.
I enjoy going to punk shows like that. But yeah, the audio for the film did hinder it, I'd say.
Yes. And that does it for the rules for the movie. The total number of sips comes to 103, and that is equivalent to drinking 3.5 standard 12-ounce cans. That, of course, is based off our 30 sip per can scale per 12-ounce can.
And there's not a whole lot to say about this drinking game, to be honest. It was fine. There was nothing that was mercied. It was just generally well-paced in terms of a drinking game.
Oh, yeah.
But I will add that for being a slasher movie, it was a lot less than we expected, I think.
Yeah.
Because most slasher films that we do are in the 5 drinks kind of limit.
4 or
or
5
whatever,
drinks, give or take.
at least.
And that's kind of surprising just for the fact that there's 12 deaths, which is, I'd say, a pretty good number for most of the movies that we watch.
Yeah, that's a pretty standard death count for slasher movies.
Yeah, and which is just adding on to it. I feel like it's just not the same as other slasher movies.
It isn't, yeah. For me, this was less of a slasher movie, or at least I wasn't as interested in the slasher aspect of it, and I was more interested in like the setting and the atmosphere and, you know, all the people that they were surrounded by and everything. I was more interested in that side of it rather than the slasher, because like with most slashers you're excited to see the creative kills, where this one didn't have that. You could argue there was only one creative kill where he kind of drilled the guy's hands against the walls.
Yeah, give him stigmata.
Yeah, that was the only creative kill in the movie. So yeah, I wasn't really into the slasher aspect of it. I was just into the atmosphere that they were trying to set, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like that's the main problem with the movie, is whenever you find one thing good, there's, I feel like, 2 things that you can nitpick about, or that are just bad about the movie. So one example is, like, the scenes with the red lighting looked great. It just kind of foreshadowed Reno's descent into madness for the most part, and that he would go insane, and how the movie would kind of end with him getting caught and all that. However, the next example is Reno couldn't fucking act.
Or rather, Abel, the director, couldn't act.
Yeah, which is, I guess, weird that he starred in his own movie.
I think the reason that he casted himself as the lead is A, maybe he wanted to be the lead actor in a movie, and B, budget was a very tight, like, it was very tight budget. It was only $20,000, I think. So that's probably another reason as to why he played a character in the movie. And it's not that out of the ordinary for a director to be involved in the movie in some way. Like, sometimes they have a cameo or something, but they're not usually the lead actor. And then another good example of something good about the movie followed up by something bad is the music. Like we said, we like the punk music, and like at the very least we thought it was entertaining. But for me, the soundtrack as a whole, apart from the punk band, was not great. And like, for example, when he was doing the kills, there wasn't a whole lot of sense of tension or anything involved because the music didn't feel right. I don't know, something was off about the music to me, and it stuck out in a weird way. And that could also be because, like we mentioned, the sound quality for the movie is not great. So maybe that played a part into it, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah. So one other thing that we found out in our research, that the movie was banned in the UK. We weren't really too sure why, but the only evidence I could really find was, I think there was a cover in the UK that was released where there was a drill going through somebody's head and it was super gory. So I think that's literally the only reason that why it was banned in the UK, from my understanding anyways.
Yeah, when I learned that it was banned, I was kind of confused, like, why is it banned? And the reason I thought that is because it wasn't overly gory or anything. There wasn't a ton of nudity or anything. Like, there was one scene, I guess, that had some boobies, but other than that, it wasn't gory. Like, you occasionally saw a drill going through somebody, but it was pretty clean and there wasn't a lot of blood. So I don't know, it was just a little surprising to hear that it was banned.
Yeah.
And I will say that I did learn that it was banned before watching the movie, so that kind of made me even more excited, and it had my expectations higher to see something crazy and over the top. But it ultimately didn't satisfy those expectations because it was kind of boring, the kills at least.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't look too over the top, like we mentioned before. So it was a little bit disappointing in that regard.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a letdown. So, for example, when somebody says this is the goriest movie somebody's ever seen, that gives me more incentive to want to watch it, just to kind of see what they do in the movie.
Yeah, because, you're curious. Same with me. Like, I'm curious too. The second I hear someone say, absolutely never watch this,
it makes you want to watch it.
I immediately go and find it out and watch it. So I guess now we'll talk about Reno a little bit more in depth, and that he isn't really a typical slasher villain that you kind of know and love as a horror fan, at least for like the iconic ones such as Michael Myers with his mask, or Jason's mask too, or Freddy Krueger with his claw, or the whole Ghostface costume, or even My Bloody Valentine or Terror Train, which we looked at. They had outfits or something unique about them,
Yeah, like changing costumes for the guy from Terror Train, for example, or like even like it doesn't have to be like a mask or anything like that. It can just be like a weapon, like a chainsaw. Even a chainsaw is kind of synonymous with Leatherface.
Well, yeah, of course, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But obviously, for Reno, he has his drill, which is his one thing, but it's kind of underwhelming, and I don't know. It could have been done. I think I'm just looking for something more over the top, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
But in saying that, because we see his face throughout the whole movie and see him struggling throughout the whole movie, it kind of gives us a reason and an excuse to empathize with him, I guess, and see him as a human being rather than just a killer. It helps at least see him more human than maybe some of the other killers.
Yeah, I guess that's the other thing. We're just staring at a stupid fucking face the entire movie, and through that, we're just honestly getting less attached to him because we fucking hate him as a character. So we're just like, we don't care if you kill people. The people that he kills are kind of pointless anyways. They don't add anything to the plot really besides like the last like 5 minutes.
Yeah, the only people that get killed at the end have anything to do with the movie. The rest is just random homeless people.
And it kind of makes me think that the movie shouldn't have been a horror movie. I feel like it should have kind of been like a drama movie or an action movie. It shouldn't have been advertised as a horror movie, because I feel like that was the worst part about it, is there wasn't a lot of horror elements.
I mean, there was definitely horror elements where like all the kills were horror. Like, it was definitely a horror movie, I would say. But I do know what you're saying, like how this is like most slashers don't have a major plot, I guess, and they more focus on the horror aspects and slasher elements like the creative kills and stuff we mentioned. But this movie kind of had more of a story, and it seemed to me like more of a focal point on Reno's descent into madness and how he was struggling with his financial side of things and everything. And so yeah, I know what you're saying about how it didn't feel that horrific because of that aspect, but I would still consider a horror movie, definitely.
It makes me kind of think, after your point actually makes a lot of sense. I feel like it makes me think that it shouldn't be a slasher movie. It should be more or less of a character arc or that kind of build up.
Yeah, character study.
Character study, that's the word I'm looking for.
It definitely, like, I like this movie for the character study, actually.
I actually didn't.
Okay.
I didn't like a lot about the movie. So overall, what did you think about the movie?
I think I liked it more than you. Like, I didn't hate the movie by any means. Like I said, I liked it for the character study. I liked seeing the atmosphere and like just the overall punk setting, and like there was a lot of aspects that I can kind of relate to in a way. Like the whole punk scene and stuff, it is like, it looks legit and stuff. So I liked it for that reason. And just seeing like Reno's drugged up roommate, for example, she was clearly a drug addict, and just seeing stuff like that, it does intrigue me and interest me when I see it in films like that. So just the whole setting of the movie and where it took place, like in the gritty, grimy streets of New York too, like that whole scene, like I said, I like seeing that kind of stuff. So I think I liked it more for that reason. Like I said before, I didn't like it as a slasher film, but I did like it as a character study.
After watching the movie, I liked it less than I thought I would going into it, I'd say. I feel like I'd at least see some cool kills, something like that, but I got pretty much nothing. For a slasher movie advertised as a slasher movie, I pretty much didn't really take away anything from that. There was some things that were cool, like as you said, like the gritty punk scene was good. I wish they would have expanded a little bit more on the characters, like why the roommate was so fucked up in the head, as she clearly was.
Well, drugs, for sure.
Yeah, drugs for sure, but I would have liked to see like what led her down that path, for example.
Okay, yeah.
There was there's one thing that I guess I didn't touch on, like the pacing for a lot of scenes were just dragging on for way too long, such as like changing the station for the channel, or I think at the bus station, the homeless guy was just like yelping for a solid 3 minutes.
Or the scene where they're eating pizza, Reno is just sitting there,
scarfing down so much, slice after slice.
And
like
you just see the whole thing pan out.
Yeah,
you don't
the
even see
movie,
a cut or anything.
the movie could have been, I swear to God, 10 or 20 minutes shorter, and it wouldn't have made a difference. In fact, it probably would have made it a lot more enjoyable. But I wouldn't say hate's a strong word, but I definitely disliked the movie.
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, with a movie like this, there's going to be some questionable decisions, which leads us right into our award ceremony, where we award one not-so-lucky nominee the Darwin Award. This award goes out to the character that made a stupid decision that resulted in them getting killed, somebody else getting killed, or simply resulting in something bad happening. This award can also be given to a character who is just plain dumb. Here are the nominees.
Today's first nominee is Reno for lashing out at Carol and causing her to want to leave with her ex-husband.
The only other nominee that we have is the homeless guy that got drilled in the back at the bus stop. Right when he felt the drill, he could have easily moved forward with a minor scratch, considering that there was a barrier right in between him and Reno.
And the winner is the homeless guy in the bus shelter that could have easily ran away if he tried to.
And with all that being said, we hope you enjoyed our look into the Driller Killer, suggested to us by King Need Gore. If you end up playing the game alongside the movie, or if you have any feedback or suggestions, let us know in the comments below. Also, let us know in the comments what you thought the best thing about this movie was.
Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on the next week's episode, where we are going to be making a drinking game for Fade to Black. If you want to check out our most recent video, click on the box on the top right, or if you want to see a playlist of all the drinking games and horror movies we review, click on the box below it. Thanks for tuning in, and this is us saying,
Cheers to fears.
We don't have any drugs. We don't have any money. We don't have any dope. I can't take it anymore.